straight ahead. Well, we are reportedly 48 hours out from a total default on the debt to the foreign governments and private Federal Reserve that have taken over this country through economic fraud and have engaged in a conquest that the British Empire couldn't succeed in, that Hitler couldn't succeed in, that the Soviets couldn't succeed at. They have conquered us through fraud by stealth. But the moment you become aware of the private banking cartel's global government that they're publicly admitting now they're setting up, that you'll pay your VAT taxes to, your carbon taxes, and the rest of it, the minute you're aware of it, then their power begins to wane. That's why the banksters are setting up a homeland security control grid in every country they're in under international agreements and rules to crack down and go after anybody that criticizes the private central banks running those nations. When you get the internal training manuals from England to Australia, from Germany to Canada to the United States, it is the same thing. The public is told, give your rights up because Al-Qaeda is hiding underneath every table. But when you get the actual manuals, it's people that don't want to give up their sovereignty to the global government. What is globalism? It is really less than the Fortune 100, 50 or so companies. But and if you look at the board of directors of the Fortune 500 itself, it's almost completely owned and controlled by less than just a few hundred top managers who work for less than 20 wealthy families. And we've made films on this and broken all of this down. And globalism, to give you just a snapshot example of what it is before I get into the debt ceiling and the gun grabbing and all the news that's taking place right now that's so vital, we've got to have the big picture and, you know, really pull back and see it in the context. As Carol Quigley wrote for the CIA in Tragedy and Hope, the head of Georgetown Political Science, Bill Clinton's political mentor, the people running this country want authoritarianism. And they know that if you only have one flavor of authoritarianism, you'll wake up and fight it. If you have a simple dictator or a one-party oligarchy that's not hiding itself. But if you control both parties or all three parties, like in the case of England, then you can have them fight over the power and fight over being the head ring-wraith minions over the country. Because there will be real rivalries and slight differences in rhetoric, but they're still beholden to the very same interests, kind of like a Don King boxing match where he owns both fighters, and you know, people pretty much don't even watch those heavyweight fights anymore that he owns because people know that it's as rigged as you know, as a slot machine in Vegas. So that's what we're dealing with here. And let's take a microcosm example of globalism. And I talk about this every week because it's in the news, and I know people are aware of this. It's not some more archaic example or an example that isn't as popularly known. But you know about Obama giving out now more than 2,000 waivers to companies. One waiver for McDonald's, over 500,000 employees total, don't have to, or is it 400,000? I forget the exact number. The point is hundreds of thousands of employees don't have to get insurance now. McDonald's doesn't have to pay for it. But then the McDonald's competition down the street, some mom and pop outfit or some regional privately owned true free market group, if these rules go into effect as they're supposed to at the end of this year, you are going to have to purchase that insurance. And of course, you'll lay people off, you'll have less hours, you'll cut the people that you get the insurance for's pay, but they'll have insurance. And the insurance companies, of course, wrote the plan on record. They get to force 35 million people that didn't have insurance to get it. The feds get to then lower the standard of care, and computers tell doctors what procedures they can do. The literal death panels, it was in the news this week in England, where they're not giving people cataract surgeries anymore. They're not giving them cancer surgeries. That's the National Health Service. But the profits for the private groups administering it, they go up in England, in Canada, and now here in the U.S. Oh, they take the money out of your check. Or in this healthcare system, your employer does, but you just get less care. But side issue, this is an example of how these monopoly insiders operate. So 2,000 major companies and it's a list of people that have contributed to the Democratic Party. This is mafia government. They don't have to get insurance, but you do. Let me give you another example. It was in the news again this week. General Electric. The head of General Electric heading up the President's Economic Council, deciding where the trillions in, quote, stimulus money go. And we already saw General Motors, over $4 billion total. It's $1 billion and change per country or per region. Over $1 billion to send a new plant, part of the economic stimulus of your tax dollars. They take your tax dollars, stimulate jobs, and $1 billion plus goes to build a factory in Brazil. $1 billion plus to build one in Eastern Europe, and $1 billion plus to move to China. And then it was in the news this week. General Electric, who paid zero taxes the last 3 years in a row, just type in General Electric paid zero taxes, you'll pull up. The headline from Friday, moving one of the last divisions they had in North America, U.S. and Canada, their giant X-ray manufacturing division, including government contracts for airports. That, both medical and security, that is moving to China. And guess what? There's bailout money involved in it. So you are literally paying to have your job shipped. And China has tariffs on us. They also keep their currency low, which is another tariff. This is how it works. They call it, oh, free trade, fair trade. And so what is Obama doing? With the Republicans and the head of the Chamber of Commerce and the head of the different business leagues. What's the word I'm looking for? What's the big national association of not manufacturers? They're for it too. What's the national association that deals with business? I forget. I saw him on the news Friday and saw the text reports. The point is all the so-called lobbies that are for jobs here in the United States, they are lobbying and saying how great this new trade deal with South America and South Korea are to further move jobs. And months ago, I watched the congressional hearings on C-SPAN dealing with this, and I watched the different press conferences they had afterwards because C-SPAN comboed up congressional coverage and then cut to trade representatives in South Korea in joint. It was actually Obama and the South Korean president giving a press conference, and they were admitting that there was a trade deficit of 4-to-1 or more with South Korea, and he was saying these new deals, don't worry, are going to fix that. And now there's been analysis done, and of course, it's going to make it even worse because the big insider mega corporations own the politicians here. And they also own them in South Korea and Mexico, China, the list goes on. And so they can set trade deals up where there's extra taxes and regulations here and where they even get a tax incentive to move to China or South Korea or Mexico. And so we've lost almost all of our industry. And this is what globalism is. Henry Kissinger for Nixon and the different trade associations goes over to China, makes sweetheart inside deals where they can get goods made at slave labor prices that America could never compete with. But if that isn't bad enough, they then put regulations on U.S. industries that they don't have in 160-plus third world countries. India, the list goes on. And so, of course, all the jobs go there. Over 80% of our industry, manufacturing, has left in the last 30 years. Also, since 2001, the dollar has lost at least 40% more of its purchasing power. And that's the federal government's own numbers. And so you add all of this together, what's their answer? We're going to come in now with carbon taxes only on the United States, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, New Zealand, who are all under the very same strategy, having their own countries, bought and paid for by the same megacorporations, sign government laws shutting down all activity in our countries, while the very politicians are owned by the megacorporations who own the industries they've developed and invested in the third world. That's a guaranteed investment boost because they've shut down all their competition in the West. This is crony collectivism by the elite. This is monopoly, man. And this is how they rule us. This is how they dominate us. All right, when we come back, now that we've talked about how this tilted playing table works, this rigged casino, we're going to get into the so-called debt ceiling crisis and the gun grabbing. Stay with us.